Millions of people relying on this and other pumping stations. No way. It's nothing short of a miracle.
I believe that Israel can help a lot to solve the water problem.
Israel is known for turning deserts into farms and making scarce water useful. But one of its boldest moves goes beyond farming or desalination. It built a huge man-made river through the dry desert, changing the nation's economy and daily life. This wasn't just about water. It was about linking cities, helping development, and creating chances where there were none. Millions of tons of dirt were moved, pipes stretched across harsh land, and amazing engineering made life possible in dry areas. How did Israel achieve such a risky project? And what dangers and benefits came from shaping nature like this? Join us in this video as we reveal the details. The massive river inside the desert that changed the nation. The southern part of Israel, especially the wide and lonely Negev desert, was once a place where daily life was almost too hard to imagine. The land was dry in a painful way, not just a little dry, but dry to the point where the ground cracked open and stayed that way for months. The sun burned so strongly that it felt like it was pressing down on everything, and the heat rose so high during summer that temperatures often climbed well above 110 degrees Fahrenheit. This intense heat made planting and farming feel like a battle that people had no way to win. Rain arrived only for a short time each year, and when it did come, it came in small amounts that disappeared almost instantly into the thirsty earth. Over the years, the water hidden beneath the ground also began to fade away, little by little, until families started to notice that there just was not enough left to grow crops, take care of animals, or even live comfortably. Many families had to depend on water brought to them by trucks that traveled from faraway places, just so they could cook, drink, or wash. And even as people struggled with this extreme dryness,
deep beneath the waters of the Mediterranean is a very strange geological feature: the Mediterranean salt giant.
The Mediterranean Sea sat only a short distance away, full of water, yet completely undrinkable because of its heavy salt. This closeness of endless water, paired with the land's desperate need for it, created a sharp contrast that pushed the country to consider an idea that sounded bold, unusual, and almost unbelievable: bringing seawater deep into the desert and trying to give real life back to a land that looked too dry to recover. The country eventually approved a massive water project around the year 2000, making a decision to invest almost $3 billion into it. This large sum of money made it very clear how loyal and serious the nation's leaders were on changing the desert's future. Moving seawater across the dry land was only one part of the idea. The true goal was to change salty saltwater into clean, pure water that farmers could use to grow crops and that people could drink. It turned into a direct challenge to the desert itself, as though people were trying to create a river where none had ever existed. Teams of experts went into the desert to properly check the area before any machinery could begin digging or building. Because the desert is always changing and can change quickly, they spent a lot of months taking down every information they could. In order to check what was hidden under the sand, these teams used high-level tools and equipment, checked the strength of the winds during each season, and checked how the sand dunes moved. In order to check the soil layers under the earth, they dug hundreds of deep holes, some of which reached depths of over 100 feet. They marked the planned path for the water system by placing markers by hand, checking and rechecking every point until everything was exactly in the right place. All this slow and detailed work had to be done before anything else could begin, because even one wrong path could mean that a single sandstorm might bury the project overnight. When the route was finally mapped out, large bulldozers and construction machines moved in to prepare the land. In order to make the land more flat enough to carry big cars and machinery, they slowly removed tall dunes and drove the sand into lower parts. However, the sand was too weak and loose to keep building. In order to sort this issue, workers used long sprinkler systems and subterranean pipelines to spray water over large areas of sand. Huge metal rollers repeatedly pushed across the wet sand, pressing it until it became strong and stable. Over the day, the rollers' deafening noise bounced over the desert. The soft sand slowly solidified into a level surface. The ground became strong enough to support cars, cement mixers, cranes, and everything else the workers needed as the sun dried this surface once more. Finally, this resulted in a foundation made of water and sand that was strong enough to keep one of the biggest building projects ever tried in the area. After all the careful planning, testing, and preparation, how did the people actually begin turning this unforgiving desert into a place where a real river could finally exist? Let's find out. Building a river where none existed. Once the ground was finally prepared, the digging process began. This became one of the largest excavation projects in the country's modern history. Hundreds of excavators and massive dump trucks worked every single day, removing around 70,000 tons of sand and soil daily along a path that stretched almost 250 miles. The workers had to deal with temperatures soaring above 115 degrees Fahrenheit, but the work continued through rotating shifts. The canal that they carved into the ground was shaped like a wide letter U, about 150 feet across at the bottom and roughly 23 feet deep. The slope was extremely important and had to be perfect. Only 1 inch of drop for every 100 feet of distance, so the water could flow naturally without the help of pumps. Survey teams walked the route again and again, checking the ground using precise laser tools every 160 feet. Much of the sand that was removed was reused to build tall embankments along both sides of the canal, forming protective walls between 10 and 16 feet high. In places where the soil was weak, workers had to strengthen it by drilling sand piles up to 25 feet deep, or by mixing clay and cement into the ground. Before long, the construction area looked like a chain of small moving cities stretched across the desert. There were temporary workshops, small concrete plants, equipment repair stations, living areas for workers, and offices for engineers. These small camps shifted along with the progress of the digging, creating long strips of activity in the middle of the empty desert. After the canal was dug, the next step was to seal it properly. The desert sand was so dry and absorbent that any water that entered the canal would simply vanish into the ground. So sealing the canal became one of the most important stages of the entire project. Workers first placed a thin layer of fine sand, about 2 inches deep, and carefully leveled it. Then large concrete panels were formed, each around 4 to 5 inches thick and sized about 16 feet by 10 feet. Between every concrete section, workers added expansion joints filled with hot bitumen so the concrete could expand and shrink safely during the extreme heat. In places where the soil underneath was especially unstable, workers added a layer of HDPE geomembrane beneath the concrete and anchored it with steel, then covered it with soft sand to protect it. In the end, more than 220 miles of the canal were covered in concrete. To protect the canal from blowing sand, workers also planted vetiver grass and acacia trees along the sides. When seen from above, the finished canal looked like a long silver line, cutting straight across the golden desert landscape. In addition to the canal itself, the project required many extra structures to make everything work smoothly. These included large bridges that allowed roads and railways to cross over the canal, spillways to control flooding, drainage culverts, siphons, and aqueducts. All these structures were carefully placed to make sure that traffic could continue, floodwaters could be managed, and water flow could be controlled. Distribution gates were installed every few miles so the canal could send water into smaller channels spreading across the land. Each part had to function perfectly, because even one small failure could stop water from reaching entire farming regions. After almost 15 years of construction, the canal was finally ready for testing. Engineers opened the gates slowly and controlled the flow of water, increasing it step by step, from 500 cubic feet per second to 2,000, and eventually up to 6,000. Teams of workers walked alongside the canal, checking carefully for leaks, cracks, or any signs that the ground might shift under the pressure of the water. Villages that had waited for decades for this moment gathered to watch the first streams of water move through the canal. For some people, it felt like watching the desert come back to life, right in front of their eyes. But the water that flowed into the canal started as seawater, and seawater cannot be used for drinking or farming. To solve this problem, the project relied on a complex desalination system. First, the water passed through filters that removed sand, debris, and other particles. Then it moved into advanced treatment stages, including nanofiltration and reverse osmosis. During reverse osmosis, the water was pushed at very high pressures through extremely tiny membranes with microscopic pores. Only pure water molecules could pass through these pores, leaving salts, metals, and chemicals behind. After this process, the water became so pure that minerals such as calcium and magnesium had to be added back into it to improve the taste and balance the pH level. The water was then disinfected using ultraviolet light or ozone, and a small amount of chlorine was added to keep it safe while it traveled through the system. Sensors constantly monitored every detail to make sure the water was clean and safe before it entered the main canal. From there, the fresh water was carried across the land using a massive distribution system that had originally been built in the mid-20th century. This system was strong enough to move tens of thousands of cubic meters of water every hour, allowing the newly cleaned water to travel deep into the desert so that communities far from the coast could benefit from it. After years of relentless work and human determination, what does the result and outcome look like? Let's delve deeper. From desert to oasis, Israel's bold transformation of the arid land. Israel's Desert Water Project has shown how even the most difficult places can be changed with human effort, technology, and proper design. The change of arid, dry soil into fruitful farmland is among the most successful results. Areas that had not produced crops for decades started to bloom after the building of the canals and desalination systems. Villages that had been abandoned due to a shortage of water were rebuilt. Local companies reopened, schools reopened, and people were able to make plans for the future. The Israeli creation of drip irrigation reduced waste and improved crop growth by providing water directly to plant roots. What was once a brown desert is now green farmland, as seen in satellite photos. Israel's long history of smart water management served as the background for this success. The nation built the national water carrier in the 50s and 60s to transport water from the northern Sea of Galilee to arid southern areas. Israel created significant desalination plants along the Mediterranean coast and creative farming methods over time. These plants remove salt from seawater so that it can be used for farming and drinking. When joined together, these technologies gave a solid basis for the Desert Water Project, showing that water could get to the areas most in need. Sustainability has been a key goal of the project. The artificial rivers and canals are carefully monitored with sensors and computer systems that track water flow, temperature, pH levels, and mineral content. Almost all wastewater is treated and reused for farming, about 90% of it, making sure no water is wasted. Solar energy powers many of the desalination plants, reducing the use of fossil fuels. This careful design allows Israel to manage water efficiently while supporting cities, farms, and factories. The system is designed to last, providing water safely and steadily even in the desert's extreme conditions. The project has also helped the environment. The return of water to the desert has brought back animals and plants that had disappeared. Birds now follow the green corridors created along the canals during migration, and small oases have appeared near reservoirs and ponds. Communities that once struggled to survive now have water for drinking, farming, and business. The project is not only a source of life for people, but also for nature. It is a clear example of how human work can restore ecosystems while also supporting human development. The Desert Water Project has symbolic importance as well. It shows that people can overcome even very difficult natural conditions with determination, planning, and technology. It has shown that scarcity can become abundance and change a dead desert into a flourishing, fertile area. People from all across the world are interested in the initiative. In order to understand how Israel handles water so effectively, experts and government delegations from nations in Africa, the Middle East, India, and even the United States have traveled there. Now, a lot of them are using the same idea to fight water scarcity in their own nations. The initiative also talks about the human work that went into the success. The canals, pipelines, and desalination plants were built over many years by thousands of laborers, scientists, and engineers. They always worked far from their homes in the hot and dry desert. Their efforts have produced a system that powers communities, keeps farms, and supplies water to millions of people. Because of this vital water, communities thrive. Farmers harvest crops in formerly barren fields, and kids play by the canals. In the end, Israel's Desert Water Project is more than a technical success. It is a story of hope, planning, and human strength. The canals, desalination plants, and irrigation systems have made the desert bloom, restored ecosystems, and improved lives. They also offer a model for other countries facing water shortages. By showing how water can be captured, cleaned, and delivered carefully, Israel has proven that even the hardest challenges can be overcome. The desert, once dry and lifeless, now flows with water and life. A reminder that with vision, technology, and courage, humans can make even the impossible possible. If Israel could transform its own desert into a thriving oasis with water, could a similar bold vision save the rapidly disappearing Dead Sea before it vanishes completely? Let's learn more. The Red Dead Project, a high-stakes plan to save the Dead Sea. In the Middle East, there is a project that seems almost impossible. Israel and Jordan planned to move water from the Red Sea to the Dead Sea. The idea is to send thousands of gallons of water every day through pipelines, tunnels, and pumping stations across the desert. People hope this will stop the Dead Sea from disappearing, but scientists warn it could harm both seas. The Dead Sea has been shrinking for decades. Its shoreline has pulled back, leaving salt flats and cracked ground.
The lowest place on Earth, the Dead Sea, is slipping away. This natural wonder is vanishing at an alarming rate.
The main source of water, the Jordan River, used to flow from the north, bringing clean water from springs, rain, and Lake Kinneret. In the 20th century, Israel built the national water carrier, taking much of the Jordan River water to supply dry areas in the south. Jordan also built dams and canals, including the King Abdullah Canal, taking even more water. The Palestinian territories used what remained. Today, about 90% of the river's natural flow is gone. Near the Dead Sea, the river is now little more than muddy ditches in some places. Because of this, the Dead Sea has dropped almost 148 feet since 1930. Sinkholes have formed along the coast, caused by underground salt layers dissolving and collapsing. Some are very deep and appear under roads or buildings, making the area dangerous. Scientists warn that if this continues, the Dead Sea could turn into pits and small salt lakes, rather than a single body of water. To help, Israel and Jordan created the Red Sea Dead Seawater Conveyance Project, also called the Red Dead Project. The plan started seriously in the mid when the two countries asked the World Bank to study it. The project would take seawater from the Gulf of Aqaba and send it 112 miles through a desert pipeline. The heat in the desert can be extreme, so the pipeline must be buried to keep the water from getting too hot. Engineers planned layers of insulation, sensors to detect earthquakes, and flexible joints to handle shifting ground. The project also included a desalination plant near Aqaba. Clean water would be shared among Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinian territories based on needs. The leftover salty water, or brine, would be sent through the pipeline into the Dead Sea. Because the Dead Sea is over 1,300 feet below sea level, hydro turbines could generate electricity from the descending water to help power pumps and equipment. Even with this plan, construction never started. The cost, around $10 billion, was too high. There were also disagreements over who would pay and how the water would be shared. Political issues and technical challenges kept the project from moving forward. Experts also worried about the environment. Mixing Red Sea water with Dead Sea water could create chemical reactions, making the water cloudy and changing its appearance. Aqaba's coral reefs could be damaged by construction, water intake, or leaks. Animals and plants in the Wadi Araba desert could be affected by new moisture or artificial water sources. These risks made many scientists question whether the project would do more harm than good. Before this, other ideas existed. In the 19th century, a British explorer suggested connecting the Mediterranean Sea to the Dead Sea. After Israel's founding, engineers thought water flowing from the Mediterranean could create electricity while helping the Dead Sea. Studies in the 70s suggested a canal could produce up to 800 megawatts of power, but costs, mountains, and other challenges made it impossible at the time. Later, advances in desalination technology reduced the need for such a massive canal. Saving the Dead Sea is still a question. A similar case is Mono Lake in California. In the 40s, Los Angeles took water from the lake's rivers. Over time, the lake shrank, salinity rose, and birds and other wildlife suffered. A group of scientists and lawyers fought for 15 years to limit water use. In 1994, the state ordered Los Angeles to reduce withdrawals. Slowly, the lake began to recover. Though fragile, it shows that reducing human interference can help save dying lakes. This example suggests a lesson for the Dead Sea. Protecting and restoring natural water sources might be safer than moving seawater. However, political conflicts, water shortages, and the scale of the Dead Sea's problem make this very difficult. The Red Dead project remains an ambitious but unbuilt plan, full of potential benefits and risks, showing how complicated it is to manage water in one of the driest regions of the world. If Israel can transform its desert into a green oasis, could it go even further? Turning the harsh desert into a hub for trade and industry with a massive port and rail network? Stay tuned for more. Southern Gateway, Israel's ambitious desert port project. Israel is planning a very big project in the Negev desert called the Southern Gateway. The idea is to build a seaport in the middle of the desert and connect it to Israel's main cities with a 155-mile railway. This railway would run from the desert port to Be'er Sheva, the central industrial hub, and then to Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. The project is very expensive, with costs estimated between $15 and $20 billion, making it one of the largest projects in Israel's history. The reason Israel wants this desert port is because most of its trade depends on the sea. Currently, almost all goods, like fuel and food, pass through the Mediterranean ports of Haifa and Ashdod. Ships have to use the Suez Canal in Egypt, which is very narrow. Past problems show the risks. In 2021, the container ship Ever Given blocked the Suez Canal for 6 days.
The massive cargo ship which was stuck in the Suez Canal is finally freed. The 400-metre-long vessel had been wedged in the canal for around a week. It had caused a major traffic jam in one of the world's most strategically important shipping routes connecting Europe with Asia,
delaying over 400 ships and causing huge economic losses. In the 1967 war, the Suez Canal was closed for 8 years, forcing ships to travel long detours. The southern gateway would reduce Israel's reliance on the Suez Canal. Eilat, Israel's only city on the Red Sea, currently has a small port. It handles only 50,000 TEUs per year, compared to Haifa's 1.46 million TEUs. The coastline is narrow, the water is shallow, and mountains limit space. Israel plans to dig a 1,000-foot wide, 50-foot deep water basin in the desert, holding 80 million cubic feet of seawater. To do this, workers would move over 100 million tons of earth, equal to 13 Giza pyramids. To maintain the port, a 5-mile underground pipeline will bring water from the Gulf of Aqaba. Pumps, valves, and waterproof linings will keep the port working. The railway line will require more than 60 bridges, tunnels, and viaducts across the desert. Trains are expected to carry over 10 million tons of cargo each year. This could cut the shipping time from Asia to Europe by over 10 days. The project could bring major benefits. Tourism in Eilat could increase by $1.5 billion a year, and the city's population may grow from 55,000 to 80,000. The project could create more than 150,000 jobs and reduce congestion at Haifa and Ashdod ports. Customs clearance times are expected to drop by 30 to 40%. Overall, the project could add 1.8 to 8% to Israel's GDP, around $2.5 billion per year. Solar panels on port buildings could cut carbon emissions by 30%. However, the project faces big environmental challenges. The Gulf of Aqaba has the world's northernmost coral reef, over 7,000 years old. Pumping seawater into the desert could harm the reef and the desert ecosystem. High desert temperatures, over 110 degrees Fahrenheit, increase evaporation, corrosion, and maintenance costs, which may reach $1 billion every decade. Financial and technical issues are also major hurdles. Most materials and skilled labor must come through Egypt or Jordan, which Israel hopes to bypass with the project. Private investors are cautious because of the high costs and risks. Locals in Eilat are concerned, with a 2025 survey showing 62% oppose port expansion and industrial development. Internationally, the project is being watched closely. Countries like the UAE, India, South Korea, and Japan see the potential for faster shipping routes. Egypt, on the other hand, sees it as a threat.
Egypt could go from being a country with which Israel has a cold peace.
The perception in Egypt, amidst the highest echelon of decision makers, is that Israel is indeed a threat.
Because it could reduce Suez Canal traffic and revenue. The project has been called a race between Israel's desert port and Egypt's canal. So far, construction has not started. The project is still at the planning stage, with surveys and technical studies completed. No cranes, rails, or docks exist yet. The government has not made a final decision because costs keep rising and the challenges remain. Officials say the project is not dead, but is on hold. In conclusion, the Southern Gateway is one of the boldest attempts to build a port in a desert. It could bring strategic, economic, and logistical benefits for Israel, but it also faces major environmental, financial, and political challenges. Its success will depend on careful planning, protecting nature, and international cooperation. The project shows Israel's ambition to turn the desert into a hub of trade and industry while reducing reliance on the Suez Canal. If Israel can transform its desert ports and inland trade routes, how has it approached modernizing its Mediterranean ports to handle the growing flow of goods from Asia? Let's take a closer look. Modernizing Israel's ports, building Haya into a trade powerhouse. Israel has shown it can do a lot with limited resources. The country has built large water systems using desalination and has managed farming in the desert. Some of Israel's most ambitious projects are happening along the Mediterranean coast, where the country has worked hard to modernize its ports to handle growing trade with Asia. Over several years, Israel removed more than 529 million cubic feet of sand, silt, and rock from the Mediterranean seafloor. Much of this material, about 353 million cubic feet, was used to build artificial land covering 247 acres. This land became the foundation for the new Bayport terminal. The main goal of these efforts was to make trade with Asian countries, which make up about 25 to 30% of Israel's imports, faster and more efficient. The southern port of AOT on the Red Sea was once the main entry point for Asian goods. It is the shortest route for ships from Asia, but it has serious limitations. Its piers are only 31 to 33 feet deep, so modern container ships, including Panamax, Neo-Panamax, and ultra-large vessels, cannot dock. AOT also has no rail connections to Israel's main cities, meaning cargo has to travel over 155 miles by truck, which is slow and costly. Environmental concerns also prevent expansion. The Gulf of Aqaba has coral reefs that could be damaged by dredging.
Here in the Gulf of Aqaba, we have found corals that are extremely resistant to global warming. These corals out here have evolved to be able to cope with the water temperatures that are predicted for the Gulf at the end of the century.
And local tourism depends on the coast remaining untouched. Because of these issues, AOT is not a practical option for modernizing Israel's maritime trade. Instead, Israel focused on the port of Haya. Before modernization, it could not handle ultra-large container ships, and depths ranged from 33 to 47 feet. Starting in 2015, dredging deepened the port to 56 to 57 feet. Large machines, including chain bucket dredgers and self-propelled suction dredgers, were used to remove sediment. Regular maintenance ensures the port remains deep enough for the largest ships. The Bayport terminal was built on artificial land with reinforced foundations and drainage systems. Giant cranes were installed to handle ultra-large container ships quickly and efficiently. Protective breakwaters were constructed using over 43,000 concrete and stone elements, weighing a total of 5.3 million tons, to guard against waves and sediment buildup. Nearby, the Carmel terminal was also built on 2.4 million square feet of reclaimed land with similar infrastructure and modern equipment. These upgrades have had a major impact. Haya can now handle ultra-large vessels of 18,000 TEU or more, with a total capacity of about 1.53 million TEU in 2023. Automation, cranes, and electronic entry gates reduce delays and speed up cargo handling. The modernization has created thousands of jobs and boosted the regional economy, strengthening northern Israel as a trade and industrial hub. Israel also considered moving AOT inland through the Southern Gateway project to protect coral reefs and free up coastal land for tourism. However, Costs were over $3 billion, and the project never received enough political support. Haya remains Israel's main hub for Asian trade, demonstrating the country's ability to balance trade efficiency, environmental protection, and economic growth. The Israeli government has shown an incredible drive to reshape the country, from building massive ports and railways to turning deserts into farmland and rivers. With so much already underway, it's hard to guess what they'll attempt next. One thing is clear: Israel isn't slowing down. The nation seems far from finished with its grand plans. What do you think about the resourcefulness of Israel? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Click the next video shown on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.